So a few days ago, you might remember we uploaded a poll about the supermoon and its relationship to the tides. It seems 2/3 of you guys already know about tides, but a third don't, so we want to get everyone up to speed. So the third who don't know about tides, sit down, hang about, and we'll bring you up to speed. The other 2/3, you can swipe away, and we'll catch you in the next video. Sweet. So the first thing we're going to talk about with regards to tides, and arguably one of the most important things, is the sun. And the sun, not you, son, that sun. I tell you what, could you bring Safety Hound down to the marina? I hear some screaming and shouting down there. See if you can sniff out a couple of boat owners who need to really follow this page.
Okay.
Good lad.
Come on, Safety Hound, let's go!
I'm bringing out the big guns here. Everyone loves a puppy, eh? We'll do anything for a few extra followers. Anyway, back to the other sun. So now what we're going to do is just draw in the Earth here, and hopefully you can see this, and we're going to draw the moon in here. Now, when the moon is here, it's called a new moon, and the back side of the moon is lit up by the sun, so we can't see it from the Earth. And what's happening is the gravity from the moon and the sun, when they're in line, is quite extreme, and it pulls the water on the surface of the Earth towards them. Obviously everything to scale here, but it pulls the water on the surface of the Earth towards them, and because of some bizarre law of physics. I don't know, I failed physics at school, so I'm probably not the best person to ask, but basically it does the same thing on the back of the planet. Newton's laws of equal but opposite reaction or something like that. But anyway, this is what's called a spring tide, and here we've got very high tides. So when New Zealand is here, we've got a very high tide, and then as the Earth rotates around 6 hours, New Zealand is here, resulting in a very low tide, and that is called a spring tide, S-P-R-I-N-G, spring tide, and we get a high high and we get a low low. Spring tides on a new moon. Okay, next what we've got is the Earth we'll put back in, and the moon takes about 28 days-ish to orbit the Earth, so it comes up to here after 7 days, and what we get is when we look from the Earth, we see half a moon in the sky. My diagrams are appalling. I'm a better boat handler than I am an artist, so just bear with me on that one. But basically the moon is up here, the sun is that direction, and they're both fighting for the water on the surface of the Earth, and the end result is a more even distribution of water around the Earth. So when New Zealand is here, we get kind of a high tide, not that high. 6 hours later, it's kind of a low tide, it's not that low, and that's called a neap tide. So we get kind of high and kind of low, not very extreme on that day. Okay, my board's a little bit wibbly wobbly here, bit of an improvised classroom today. So let's put the Earth back in. Now when the moon comes up to here, as we say, that's the first quarter, 7 days, and then it comes around to here. And what we can see when the moon is here is we can see a full moon, and that's 14 days after the new full moon. And we're back to a situation where the tide and the water, I should say, is being pulled that way and it's been pulled that way. It's being stretched by those two bodies, and we're back to spring tides, high highs, low lows. So we get spring tides on new moon and full moons. And the final piece of the puzzle with regards to the moon phase is when the moon is down here and it's the last quarter. So starts here new moon, 7 days, first quarter, 14 days, full moon. 21 days is going to be a last quarter, we call that. And the result of that, you've probably guessed it already, we're back to neap tides because the sun and the moon are fighting for that water on the surface of the Earth. So an interesting question would be, why don't we get the same tides every day around the 28-day cycle? And there's a few answers to that, but one of the common reasons for that, the most important reason really, is that the Earth, the moon is in an elliptical orbit around the Earth in a yearly orbit. So it gets closer and further away from the Earth throughout the year. So a couple of times during the year, it's quite close to us, and that's when we get our supermoon. And when the moon is closer to us, its gravity effect on the water is a lot higher, so therefore we get higher tides, bigger springs, higher highs and lower lows. And then that gives us those high springs that we see on supermoons. Now, king tides is a question that we always get asked. And a king tide is a combination of 3 variables. A king tide is a high spring tide, so supermoon territory we had just last week. The second one is wind. Now, wind, when it's pushing the water in a certain direction, will actually build up the water in the direction it's pushing and can push it towards land and therefore increase the height of the tides we experience. Now, as a treat for you guys who stuck around in this video, I'm going to give you the answer to a question I'm going to be asking on the page next weekend. So pay attention to this one. Make sure you get this answer right, because I will be marking you. But basically, atmospheric pressure is another quite a significant player in how high tides are during the cycle. What do I mean by that? Well, high pressure, if you imagine, with weather, high pressure, generally good weather, it's high, it's heavy air essentially, and it's pushing down on the water, and it's actually not allowing the tides to come so high. So we get lower highs and also lower lows when we get high atmospheric pressure. And the converse is true with a low pressure. So in a low pressure system, the tide actually comes higher on a low pressure system. And you can actually calculate it. And this is the question I'll ask next weekend and see how many people actually get this answer right. Tidal predictions are all recorded at 1013 millibars. It's the datum, the reference point. Any pressure above 1013 millibars is considered to be high pressure. Any pressure below 1013 millibars is considered to be low pressure. So therefore, every increase in millibar higher than 1013 actually decreases the sea level by 1 centimeter. Think about it as pushing the water down, and for every millibar higher, it's a centimeter lower. And again, the converse is true. With a low pressure, every millibar below 1013 increases our predicted sea height, our tidal height I should say, by 1 centimeter. And that's where we start getting king tides. We get king tides when we get big springs, we get wind in a bad direction, and we also get low pressure, which tends to come with wind. We generally get low pressure with wind. So hey, look, that's a little bit of information, some good pub trivia quiz questions in there that you're now well informed on. And see how you get on with my question next weekend. Hopefully it's been useful. And as I say, really appreciate the interactions from you guys, really appreciate the likes and the comments and stuff. It helps us soar with Mr. Instagram. So please keep it up. It's been a lot of fun, and look forward to catching you in the next video.